I never thought life would get this quiet. When I was younger, mornings were full of noise. The smell of fresh coffee, the clinking of dishes, the laughter of children running through the hallway. My husband, George, would hum the same silly tune every morning while reading the paper. Now, the only sound left in this house is the ticking of the wall clock. People say silence brings peace, but sometimes silence just reminds you that no one needs you anymore. My name is Evelyn Grace, and I'm 72 years old. I live in the same little house my husband and I bought 50 years ago, a yellow one with white shutters and a porch swing that squeaks when the wind blows. Back then, this neighborhood was alive, kids playing in the street, neighbors dropping by with pies, laughter spilling from every porch. Now, most of those houses are empty, and the ones that aren't, well, no one waves anymore. Everyone's too busy staring at screens. George still lives here too, but lately, it feels like he's here in body, not in heart. He used to wake me up with a kiss every morning. Now he's gone before I even open my eyes. He says he's running errands or helping a friend, but I can tell something's changed. At first, I told myself I was overthinking. After all, 50 years of marriage teaches you that love changes. It doesn't disappear, it just grows quieter. But lately, that quiet feels more like distance. One afternoon, I overheard my niece talking on the phone to her daughter. She didn't know I was sitting just a few steps away. She should really think about moving into a nursing home, she said. She's too old to live by herself now. I doubt Uncle George even notices anymore. Too old. Too old to live alone. Too old to matter. Those words cut deeper than I expected. When she left, I smiled politely, like I hadn't heard a thing. But that night, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the woman who once worked double shifts, raised 3 children, and kept a home running on love and faith. I saw someone fading. And maybe that's how the world saw me too. The phone stopped ringing as much. My kids texted instead of visiting. Even when I sent them pictures of George and me, they just replied with emojis. That's the cruel trick of aging. You disappear slowly, one ignored message at a time. But George, my George, he was supposed to be different. He still said, "I love you," still held my hand when we walked to church on Sundays. Yet lately, his eyes carried something I didn't recognize, a heaviness. Or maybe a secret. I noticed little things at first. He started dressing nicer when he left the house. He'd come home late, smelling faintly of aftershave he hadn't used in years. He smiled at his phone sometimes, the kind of smile a man makes when he's remembering something he can't explain. When I asked, he just said, "Don't worry so much, Eve." And maybe I was worrying too much. But in my heart, I knew he was hiding something. One night, I woke up and found his side of the bed empty. I followed the faint glow of light from the living room and found him sitting there, staring at his phone, his face pale in the glow. "George," I whispered. He jumped slightly and turned the screen face down. "Can't sleep," he said softly. "Just reading something." "Who are you texting?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle. He smiled, but his eyes didn't. "Just an old friend, sweetheart. Go back to bed." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the next day, I noticed he had deleted all his messages. That's when the ache began. That twisting kind of worry that doesn't let you rest. Days passed. He grew more distant, more secretive. He'd hum unfamiliar tunes and hide mail in his briefcase. He was polite, loving even, but I could feel it, a wall between us, one brick higher every day. Then, one morning, as I was dusting the bookshelf, I found something strange behind our wedding photo. A small white envelope with my name written on it. Evelyn, for when the time comes. My heart stopped. His handwriting, shaky but unmistakable. I opened it slowly, half afraid of what I'd find inside. But the envelope was empty. Completely empty. I stood there, staring at that blank paper, my mind racing. When I confronted him that evening, he froze. "George," I said softly, holding it up. "What is this?" He looked at it for a long time before answering. His lips trembled and his eyes looked wet, not with guilt, but with something else. "It's nothing, Eve," he whispered. "Just something I meant to throw away." But his voice cracked halfway through, and that was the moment I knew. Something was very, very wrong. That night I couldn't sleep. I watched him through the half-open bedroom door, pacing, whispering, checking his phone. And though my heart wanted to believe he was faithful, my soul whispered something different. He's hiding something. But maybe it's not what you think. The next morning felt heavier than usual. Even the sunlight coming through the curtains seemed different. Cold. Pale. George was already dressed when I woke up. He was standing by the window, staring at something far away, something I couldn't see. "You're up early," I said. He turned, forcing a smile. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get a head start on the day." Then he kissed my forehead, but it was one of those kisses you give out of habit, not love. And before I could say anything, he grabbed his keys and left. Just like that. No breakfast, no coffee, not even a goodbye. The sound of the front door closing felt like a final note in a song that was ending too soon. I tried to go about my day like nothing was wrong. Made the bed, watered the plants, cleaned the kitchen. But everything I touched reminded me of him. His mug sitting by the sink, his shoes by the door, his jacket hanging on the chair. Everywhere I looked, there was a piece of him, but somehow it all felt empty. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I dialed his number. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. I left a message, trying to sound calm. "Hey, sweetheart, just checking if you're okay. Call me when you get a chance." But he didn't call back. Not that day, not the next. Just a text, late at night. "Sorry, Eve. Busy day? I'll explain soon." Explain what? The next morning, I noticed something strange. His cologne, that old spice he used to wear every Sunday, was suddenly gone from the bathroom shelf. So was his favorite watch, and in its place, a faint scent of something new. Something expensive. Something I'd never smelled before. I sat on the edge of the tub, my heart pounding. Was he seeing someone else? Was that his secret? The thought made me feel sick. But then I remembered the envelope, the empty one that said, "For when the time comes." If he were cheating, why would he write that? Why leave it behind like a clue? No, this was something else. That evening, I made his favorite dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and peach cobbler, hoping maybe we could talk. Maybe he'd open up. When he walked in, I smiled. "Dinner's ready?" He hesitated by the door, his eyes darting from me to the table. "You didn't have to cook, Eve. I already ate." Something inside me cracked. I wanted to scream, "Then who did you eat with?" But instead, I just said, "I know." We sat in silence for a while, me pretending to eat, him pretending not to notice. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "George," I whispered, "if there's something you're not telling me, please, I deserve to know." He put down his fork slowly. His hands were trembling. "There's nothing to tell," he said softly. "You're just imagining things." Then he got up and walked out of the room, and the sound of his footsteps down the hallway, slow, heavy, final, echoed in my chest long after he was gone. That night, I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker. I thought about all the years we'd spent together. The nights we couldn't afford dinner but had each other, the way he used to dance with me in the kitchen when our favorite song came on. Where did that man go? Was he still in there somewhere? Or had time taken him from me too? The next morning, I found another clue, a small photograph tucked under the edge of his pillow. It was old, faded at the corners, showing a young woman holding a baby. The woman looked familiar, though I couldn't place her. On the back, in George's handwriting, were 3 words: "My promise kept." My heart dropped. Who was she? What promise? I searched through drawers, boxes, even his old desk in the study. Nothing, just bills, receipts, and old letters. But in one of the drawers, I found a folded piece of paper. It wasn't addressed to me. It was a medical form for St. Agnes Memorial Hospital, dated just a few months ago. The reason for the visit: oncology department. I froze. Cancer. The room started spinning, my knees went weak, and I had to hold the edge of the desk just to keep standing. Suddenly, everything made sense. The secret phone calls, the cologne, the new clothes, the empty envelope. He wasn't hiding from me, he was protecting me. When he came home that evening, I didn't say a word. He smiled weakly, trying to act normal. "You're quiet tonight," I nodded. "Just tired." But inside I was breaking. I wanted to ask him why he didn't tell me, why he thought I was too fragile to know, why he'd rather suffer in silence than let me carry some of that pain with him. But instead, I just reached for his hand. For the first time in weeks, he didn't pull away. We sat like that for a long time. No words, just silence. The kind of silence that says everything words can't. Later that night, when he thought I was asleep, I heard him whispering, his voice barely audible over the hum of the night. "Please, God, not yet. I still need time to make it right." Tears slipped down my face, and for the first time I understood the real meaning of distance. It wasn't that he didn't love me anymore. It was that he was trying to spare me from a truth too heavy to bear. But the thing about love is, you can't protect someone by hiding pain. You protect them by sharing it. That night, I made myself a promise. If George wouldn't tell me the truth, then I would find it myself. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, the photograph still resting on my nightstand. The woman's face stared back at me, young, kind, almost hauntingly familiar. And the baby she held, I couldn't stop looking at those eyes. There was something about them, the shape, the softness, that stirred a strange ache in my chest. By morning, I'd made up my mind. If George wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. The next day, I took the bus into town, the same route I used to take to work 30 years ago. The streets had changed, cafes replaced by glass offices, parks replaced by parking lots. But the ache of growing old in a world that moves too fast, that hadn't changed at all. When I reached St. Agnes Memorial Hospital, I hesitated outside the doors. I hadn't been there in years, not since our youngest was born. I could still remember George holding my hand back then, whispering, "You're the strongest woman I know, Eve." Now I was walking through those same doors alone. At the front desk, a young nurse greeted me with a polite smile. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" I swallowed hard. "I'm looking for a patient record, for a George Grace." She blinked. "Are you family?" "Yes," I said quietly. "His wife." The nurse's expression softened. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't give out any details without his consent. Privacy policy." I nodded, pretending to understand, but my heart was sinking. Then she leaned closer and whispered, If it helps, the oncology department is on the 4th floor. I wanted to thank her, but the words stuck in my throat. The 4th floor was quiet, too quiet. The walls smelled of disinfectant and grief. The people walking past all wore the same look, that quiet, heavy sadness that comes from loving someone who's slipping away. I didn't know where I was going until I saw it. Dr. L. Monroe, oncology specialist. I knocked softly. "Come in," a woman's voice said. Inside sat a middle-aged doctor with kind eyes. She looked up from her paperwork. "Mrs. Grace?" I froze. You know me?" She smiled gently. "George mentioned you. He's quite fond of you, you know." My eyes filled instantly. "He told you about me?" She nodded. "He talks about you all the time." Then, after a pause, her voice softened. "He didn't want you to worry." I swallowed, my lips trembling. "Please, is he dying?" She looked down at the papers in front of her, then back up at me. "He was diagnosed 6 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The world tilted. The floor beneath me disappeared. 6 months. All this time. The late nights, the phone calls, the distance. And he'd been carrying that alone. I couldn't breathe. I gripped the edge of her desk just to steady myself. "Why didn't he tell me?" I whispered. "He said he didn't want to steal your peace," the doctor said softly. "He wanted your last memories together to be full of love, not fear." Tears rolled down my face. "He thought hiding it would protect me." She nodded gently. "He's been coming here every week, but lately, he's been asking more about comfort care than treatment." I shook my head, my voice breaking. No, that can't be right. He still gets up early. He still drives." She hesitated. "He hides it well, but he's getting weaker." I left the hospital that day feeling like a ghost. Back home, I sat on the couch, clutching that faded photograph again. I turned it over in my hands, reading the words, "My promise kept." Maybe it wasn't about another woman. Maybe it was a piece of the story I didn't know. I studied the photo closer this time. The woman's face. The more I looked, the more I realized she looked just like George's sister, Clara. But Clara had passed away decades ago. And the baby. My heart skipped. Could it be? That night when George came home, I didn't confront him. Instead, I just watched him quietly as he took off his shoes and sat in his favorite chair. He looked tired, more than usual. His hands trembled as he poured his tea. He smiled when he saw me watching. "What's that look for?" "Just thinking," I said softly. "About what?" "About how much I love you," I whispered. His eyes glistened for a moment and he looked away. "You always were sentimental." But his smile didn't reach his eyes. Later that night, after he fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and opened his briefcase. Inside, I found an old, folded letter. The paper was yellowed, edges worn. It wasn't addressed to me, but I recognized his handwriting. "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't tell her. Evelyn deserves to remember me smiling, not fading. Tell her I kept my promise." My hands shook as I turned the page over. At the bottom, in smaller handwriting, were the words, "The child is ours to protect." I gasped. The photograph, the baby, the promise. Who was the child? And why had George been keeping it a secret all these years? The next morning, I searched through every drawer, every box, every envelope in that house until I found it, a small silver locket tucked away in the back of his desk. Inside was a tiny picture of that same baby, older now, maybe 10 or 11, and on the other side a name etched faintly in cursive, Lila. Lila. The name hit me like a whisper from the past, faint, familiar, almost forgotten. And then I remembered. When George's sister Clara died suddenly all those years ago, she left behind a little girl. Everyone said the baby had been adopted by distant relatives out of state. But what if she hadn't? What if George kept his promise to his dying sister and secretly took care of that child even as she grew up? What if the errands, the friends, the distance were all because he'd been visiting her? My chest tightened. My heart broke open. He wasn't betraying me. He was protecting a promise, and maybe a part of himself. I sat there for a long time, holding that locket in my palm. For the first time in months, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel betrayed. I just felt love. Because sometimes love doesn't look like flowers or gifts or kisses goodnight. Sometimes it looks like secrets carried alone, not to deceive, but to protect. And even though I knew he was dying, I decided something that night. I would not let his secret fade quietly. If he kept that promise to his sister, then I would keep mine to him, to stand beside him no matter what truth waited in the shadows. The night I found the locket, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table until sunrise, turning it over and over in my hands, tracing the name Lila with my thumb. 1,000 memories came flooding back. George's sister Clara, her laughter, the baby shower we threw for her all those years ago. And then her sudden illness, the funeral, the whispers about an adoption that no one ever confirmed. But what if there was no adoption? What if George had stepped in when no one else would? I had to know the truth. The next morning I took the old photo and the locket to the public library. I hadn't been there in years. It smelled the same. Paper, dust, and quiet. I asked the librarian for help finding records for Lila Thompson, Clara's maiden name. After a few minutes of typing, the librarian frowned. There's a Lila Thompson registered with a local foster program about 20 years ago, but the guardian's name listed is George Grace. My knees went weak. She continued, There's also an address, an old one, but still in town. I thanked her, my voice barely a whisper. The address led me to the edge of town. A small, tidy house with a white fence and flower boxes full of daisies. I stood at the gate for a long time before I knocked. The door opened and a young woman appeared, maybe in her early 30s. She had soft brown hair, gentle eyes, and when she smiled, I saw George in that smile. "Can I help you?" she asked politely. I swallowed hard. "Are you Lila?" She nodded. "Yes." My heart felt like it might stop. "My name is Evelyn Grace. I think you knew my husband." Her eyes widened slightly, then softened. "George?" she whispered. I nodded. She opened the door wider. "Please come in." Her home was warm and full of life, children's drawings on the fridge, a guitar leaning in the corner, sunlight spilling across the floor. 2 little kids peeked around the hallway, giggling. "These are my twins," Lila said, smiling proudly. They adored George. I looked at her, confused. He visited you?" "Every month," she said. "Brought the kids little gifts. Helped me with bills when things were hard. He told me you were fragile, that you needed peace. He didn't want to burden you." Tears stung my eyes. "He was taking care of you all this time?" Lila nodded. "He promised my mother, your sister-in-law, that he'd watch over me after she died. He said family wasn't about blood or names. It was about keeping promises." I pressed a hand to my mouth, sobbing softly. "He didn't tell me," I whispered. She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "He said he wanted to, but he was afraid you'd think he'd kept her a secret out of guilt. He always said, 'Evelyn has carried enough. Let me carry this one for her.'" Lila handed me a small envelope. "He asked me to give you this when he couldn't anymore." Inside was a letter, written in George's shaky handwriting. My darling Eve, if you're reading this, it means I didn't find the courage to tell you myself. The truth is simple. I wasn't keeping secrets from you. I was keeping a promise. When Clara died, she begged me to make sure her little girl never felt unwanted. The adoption fell through, and I couldn't let her disappear into the system. I told myself I'd protect her until she could stand on her own. I thought I'd tell you, but every time I looked at you, I saw your heart, so gentle, so ready to love her. And I was afraid that asking you to share one more piece of me would hurt you. The cologne, the clothes, the trips, they weren't for anyone else. They were for her, for birthdays I wasn't supposed to remember, for school plays I wanted to attend unseen. I kept every picture she gave me. The locket you found, I meant to give it to you one day. Please, my love, don't be angry. I never stopped loving you. I just tried to be a brother, a father, and a husband all at once. And now that time is running short, I need you to know, you were my only home. My promise to Clara was made out of duty, but my promise to you was made out of love. When the time comes, don't be afraid to find her. She's a good woman. Tell her about the way we danced in the kitchen, the way you laughed even when times were hard. Tell her she comes from love. Forever yours, George. By the time I finished reading, my tears had soaked the paper. Lila was crying too. We sat together in silence for a long time, two women bound by one man's love, one promise, and one truth that had been hidden for far too long. When I finally stood to leave, Lila hugged me tightly. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. "He talked about you every single visit." I nodded against her shoulder. He was a good man, and he kept his promise. As I stepped outside, the air felt lighter somehow. The sky was turning golden, the kind of sunset George used to love watching from our porch. And for the first time in months, I smiled, because the secret that once hurt now felt like a gift. He hadn't abandoned me. He'd simply carried love in more than one direction. I walked home slowly that evening, clutching the letter to my heart. The truth didn't break me. It healed me. Sometimes love hides in silence. Sometimes it disguises itself as distance. But it's still love, just waiting to be understood. The days after I met Lila felt quieter than ever. Not lonely, just still. I spent mornings on the porch holding my tea the way George used to. For the first time, I didn't feel the ache of being too old or forgotten. Instead, I felt full of memories, full of forgiveness, full of love that somehow grew larger even after he was gone. A week later, I found something unexpected in George's old dresser drawer, a small brown envelope with my name written in his handwriting. It wasn't the same as the letter Lila had given me. This one was for me alone. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was another note. Simple, short, but full of everything I needed to hear. "My dearest Eve, if you ever find this, it means I didn't get to say goodbye the way I wanted. But please know, you were the reason my heart kept beating long after it should have stopped. You used to ask why I always said, 'You're my tomorrow.' It's because every day with you felt like another sunrise I didn't deserve. You gave me warmth when the world turned cold and forgiveness before I even asked for it. You once told me you were afraid of being forgotten. Don't be. You've built a lifetime of kindness. Every soul you touched carries a piece of you. That's something time can't erase. Promise me one thing, Eve. Don't close your door to life. You still have mornings to watch, gardens to plant, and stories to tell. Someone out there needs your light. Maybe Lila. Maybe those children who remind me of us when we were young. Keep living, my love. And when you dance in the kitchen again, know that I'm right there, Just out of sight, still keeping time, always yours, George. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried, not out of pain, but gratitude, for the years we had, for the truth I finally knew, for the man who had carried love in silence, and for the chance to carry it forward in his name. That night, I did something I hadn't done since before he passed. I put on our old record, the one with our wedding song, the same song we used to dance to in the kitchen when the world felt heavy, and as the music played, I whispered, "Thank you, George, for never letting go, even when I thought you had." Weeks later, Lila and her twins came to visit. They brought flowers for the garden and laughter for the house. The children ran through the hallways, their giggles echoing against the walls. I watched them, and it felt like time itself had forgiven me for growing old. Lila hugged me tightly before she left. "He'd be proud of you," she said. I smiled. "He'd be proud of you too." And in that moment, I realized George's secret didn't take something from me. It gave me something I didn't know I needed, a new beginning. They said I was too old to matter, too old to love, too old to be part of something new. But George's secret proved them wrong, because love doesn't vanish with age, it just changes shape. Sometimes it becomes a letter tucked in a drawer, sometimes it becomes a promise passed from one heart to another, and sometimes, if you're lucky, it becomes the reason you start living again. So when people ask me now, "Do you ever get lonely, Mrs. Grace?" I smile and say, "No, my dear. I'm surrounded by love, even the kind I can't see,